Got a good one this week, folks.
Hi, I'm Hossman17. This is my Pop Culture Backlog.
I should point out there's spoilers coming ahead for the comic, but I do leave quite a bit out. Like, there's a lot to still read, and I want you to check it out if you can. But heads up, there might also be some spoilers for the Amazon Prime series. I can't tell for sure, but there most likely will be. Hossman17 here. On this week's of TPBTBT, Trade Paperback Throwback Thursday, we're going through Invincible Volume 2, 8 is Enough. You see what's happening with the titles? So let's jump right into part 1, which is issue 5. It's a little slow, but it's fun. In the dialogue, they introduce the idea of the Guardians of the Globe, which is like this big team we'll find out a bunch more about later. But basically, Omni-Man calls and says, "Hey, Mark, I need you to fly off into space." So he flies off to space to fight Alan, that alien that was introduced in the corner of a montage. So it's actually, the fight itself is honestly kind of boring, and for that I blame the art. I blame Corey Walker again. I'm probably too hard on him, but honestly the fight doesn't have any weight to it, if that makes any sense. Though now that I'm saying that, the fight is in outer space, so maybe that was by design. Maybe I'll give Walker the credit on this one. The fight feels like it's in space. So that's a good one. But yeah, like I said, you can't really feel the force of the punches, and that is something to say that later when Otley takes over the art, like, some of these fights get downright brutal and you can really feel the punches. But the fight itself is very fun. There's, some good fighting and stuff, and Alan's like, "Oh, hey, you're doing really good." It ultimately ends up with them talking and settling the fight, and they realize that Alan the alien has been coming to Earth for the past 15 or so years, every 3 years, to challenge the champion to see if they're worthy, and just by talking instead of fighting, Alan realizes he was supposed to be going to Urath, and he's been coming to the wrong planet the whole time. So yeah, that's already establishing that Invincible has the ability to think. It's not all just about punching and everything. And really, that's it. That whole fight is pretty much just the first issue. So part 2 in this book is actually issue 6. Obviously, there's the cover over there. It's honestly a drag. Nothing really happens into it. Mark and his friend William go on a tour of a new university, and like I said, nothing happens. There is a zombie robot you can see here in the cover. He's a reanimant. He shows up. They're going to come back later. They're more important. But in this one, there's really nothing. Yeah, it shows up, Mark suits up, fights it barely, and it kills itself. There really isn't a lot of action. What there is there's 5 pages dedicated to how William doesn't like being called Will or Bill. It's absolutely ridiculous. A complete filler, just does nothing. Maybe it's supposed to build this character of Mark's friend, but it doesn't. All it really does is show me that if you meet Robert Kirkman at a convention, don't call him Bobby. So you know what? While I'm doing some negative talking about this book, I'm going to get into the art. I don't know what it is. Just something about it I find off-putting. I don't like it. I just don't know. I can't connect with it. And it's not terrible art. Obviously it's miles better than anything I could ever draw. Look at that. That took me 2 hours, and it looks like Fido Dido in a muscle suit. So I'm obviously not one to be criticizing art. There's something about it. He does little circles for noses and these cold, dead black eyes that remind me of like a Charlie Brown comic with a bit more detail put into it. I don't know how to understand it. Literally, after I wrote that Charlie Brown comment, I saw this panel right there. So, I don't know, maybe I need to give him a lot more credit. But the rest is just a bunch of filler, too. There are literally 3 separate full pages dedicated to showing Mark's parents getting busy. So, that goes a little way to humanizing Nolan, I suppose. But it is also the start of something that Kirkman did really good in these books. He starts laying seeds and telling stories without Mark, and it's usually just 1 page, focusing on something that seems unrelated, but it comes back later. Like in this one, we get some guy, we don't know who he is yet, and he's on the phone talking to somebody, arguing about something, talking about how he was kicked out of the Guardians of the Globe. So I have a feeling, pay attention, that guy's going to come back later. We get another segue with the teen team, where Robot talks about how he's going to go audition for the Guardians of the Globe, and he's disbanding the teen team. And there's another one right at the end where Eve sees something terrible. I'm sure we're going to pick up the story later. It's intriguing. It wants you to keep reading. My favorite one is actually in this one. Just some guy in England out walking his dog, and then all of a sudden a bag of garbage falls out of the sky, and he looks down and he's like, "What?" And he sees that it's Burger Mart garbage. And there it is, 6 issues later, 7 issues later. 6 issues later, it's the bag of garbage that Mark threw in the very first issue when he got his superpowers, just comes down later. A full page is dedicated to it, but it's kind of funny. I like it. Now, part 3 does something a little different. We can see it right here in the cover. It says, "Move over, we're going to do the Guardians of the Globe." So, seeds have been laid. They've been mentioning the Guardians of the Globe for a couple of issues now. And in this one, we finally get to meet them. And it's literally that. Move aside Invincible. Mark sleeps in, and then we get a bunch of different stories that introduce the Guardians of the Globe. So we get to meet the Guardians of the Globe. We get to meet Darkwing, War Woman, Red Rush, Aquarus, Martian Man, Green Ghost and the Immortal, and there's something about these guys I just can't quite put my finger on. Just to give credit where credit's due, they had art by Terry Stevens, Matt Roberts, Mark Engler, Dave Johnson, and Cliff Rathburn, all collaborators with Kirkman. But yeah, each of them get a decent little piece of action before they're all called away to a Guardians of the Globe meeting, except for Aquarius. He's sitting there bored. I thought that was pretty funny. Spoiler alert. This is something that's really fun, and I've done things like this in my own writing when I dabble. It's a real bait and switch. Like, he sets up all these guys, gives them a good introduction. You feel like they're going to be big characters, and as soon as they all have their emergency meeting, they're killed. They are killed off spectacularly. And I had to go back and check. There was a little tiny bit of blood when the Mahler twins get punched, but this was the first real blood in Invincible. And, oh yeah, Omni-Man did it. So there we go. Like, we're finally 7 issues in, and we get like the hook that's going to grab you. Like, what is going on here? It's just bland. Like I said last week, it's a bland book building up to something, and all of a sudden we get like the biggest hero in the universe just killed the premier super team. What? I need the next issue right now. Just as a personal aside, I feel like the first episode of the Invincible series is going to end right here with this image. That's what I think. Where do you guys think it's going to go? I don't know. I can't wait, actually, to see. So close. So soon. Excited. Now we come to part 4, which was number 8. You can see right away there's Savage Dragon, Super Patriot, Shadowhawk. We got some cameos showing up in this one, which is obviously a sales ploy. You see them on the cover, you're going to want to buy it. And yes, they are inside the book. First thing I noticed inside was the art. Now, I've been too hard on Corey Walker, but Ryan Otley takes over, and legit, I'm reading the book, I noticed right away the art is just a little cleaner. But rereading it now, I see that Otley's art is a lot closer to Walker's at the beginning, and I don't know if that was a conscious choice or he just evolved as he went. Either way, it was a change. Corey Walker was just having trouble keeping up with the monthly schedule, and the change was made. No hard feelings. Corey Walker came back and did stuff. I think he kept doing covers as well. But like I said, we have a lot of cameos in this issue because this is the funeral for the Guardians of the Globe. The cameos bother me a little bit, but I do understand it was just a sales tactic, and it probably got people turned onto the book, so in the end it was a good thing. But it suggests that Invincible is part of the larger Image universe, which technically it is. But like Savage Dragon and Shadowhawk don't really show up. Like, there's not a lot tying it into the greater Invincible universe. I do believe later, way down the road, there is a cameo by Spawn as well. I feel like maybe Savage Dragon shows up. I'm not sure. The only one that feels a little justified is Super Patriot, because Kirkman did work on a Super Patriot book before this, and the character does tie in to later issues. But other than that, we got other superheroes in the background. We got Capes Incorporated, some characters that show up way down the line. I actually just checked. This Capes actually came out just before Invincible, so there we go. But that's what I was talking about. Like, Kirkman doesn't need to rely on the greater Image universe because he creates his own universe. Like, as the series goes on, there is stuff in there that is comparable to Marvel and DC. Like, he creates a huge universe. It's big. It's awesome. That's part of, like I was talking about, his world building. Everything gets really good. Another cameo I do feel like is missing would be Britt, this guy right here. He's another creation of Kirkman. So I feel like maybe at this point Kirkman didn't quite realize he was going to bring him into the greater Invincible universe, because the first Britt comic was actually predated Invincible as well. But then later down the road, like, Britt comes in, he ends up leading another iteration of the Guardians of the Globe. So I feel like that was a bit of an oversight, but that one's perfectly understandable from a creative standpoint. So that was Invincible Volume 2. Looking back, really, it's a lot of filler. Honestly, I was kind of praising how much filler there was in the last volume, how to bring it up to this point, but in this one it felt like a lot more filler. I don't know why Kirkman dragged it out quite as long as he did. Honestly, but in this one we get the first little hook that makes me want to keep reading. Like, seeing Omni-Man kill the Guardians of the Globe really made me want to get into the next one. And then Volume 2 hooks you, but Volume 3 digs that hook right in and lets you know you'll be along for the whole ride. So I've been Hosman17. Check back next Thursday for another video. If you enjoyed this, please, I would really appreciate if you hit a like, follow me, subscribe, all that YouTube stuff. And if you want this, I will mail it to someone in the comments if they want it. All you gotta do is ask. Just remember, like, times are tough. Sometimes you can't afford new comics. It really pays to go back and reread the old ones. Hossie out. Here's Volume 1 if you missed it. If you want to hang out with me on Twitch, you can find me at Hosman17 on Twitch.